My husband made me answer his phone call over my mom's open casket. 40 people heard him order me to leave her burial and come serve drinks at his family's party instead. My dad, a man who hasn't raised his voice since Nixon was president, went so still I thought his heart had stopped in that cemetery grass. Then he leaned down and whispered 5 words in my ear. 3 hours later, at my mother-in-law's dinner table, I gave my husband exactly what he asked for. His own family still won't say his name at Thanksgiving. Welcome to Silent Revenge, the channel for women who kept the peace so long they forgot they had a voice until the day they didn't. Get comfortable because this one starts in a graveyard and ends with a wedding ring ringing on an empty silver tray. Tell me where you're watching from tonight, and if you've ever been the one holding the tray, hit subscribe before we start because you're going to want to see how this ends. My name's Renee Sullivan. I'm 35, and for 15 of those years I went by a different last name, Callahan. I'm about to tell you about the worst Saturday of my life and the year that came after it because somebody watching tonight needs to hear this. It is never too late to pull your own chair out from under somebody else's table. I buried my mom the way I'd handled everything in that marriage, alone with a checklist. I picked the flowers, proofread the programs, hauled 40 folding chairs into the church basement myself. I loaded her favorite hymn onto my phone because 2 weeks before she passed she'd asked me to play it from her old porch radio speaker when they lowered her down. Not organ music. Just her radio like a Sunday morning back home. My husband Marcus was 17 minutes away, hanging string lights in his mother's backyard. Every summer for 2 decades, the Callahans threw the summer send-off, 40 relatives, a keg, lawn chairs, and it had never once been canceled. Not for weather. Apparently, not for my mother's funeral either, which happened to land on the same Saturday. The night before, he stood in our bedroom doorway with a beer while I ironed my black dress. "Funerals are for the living, Renee," he said, laying out his position like a memo already approved. "And the people I answer to are gonna be standing in my mother's yard tomorrow." I remember thinking I should memorize that sentence. Some part of me already knew I'd need it later. 9 the next morning, the funeral director asked gently if my husband would be riding with the family. I told him Mr. Callahan had been detained. He'd buried this county for 30 years and knew exactly what that meant, nodded and closed the door. We drove past the hardware store with an empty seat beside me that the whole church would notice. Picture 3 pegs on my mother-in-law Vivian's pantry door. One holds her apron. One holds her late husband's grilling mitts. The third, for 15 years, held mine. Nobody assigned it out loud. I was 20 the first time Marcus brought me to Sunday dinner, and somewhere between the casserole and dessert his mother handed me a dish towel like a family crest being passed down. I wasn't always the woman with the dish towel. I'd worked as a loan processor at First Ridge Bank, on track for a promotion. When our daughter Mia was born, Marcus and his mother decided, without asking me, that Callahan wives didn't need outside jobs. I turned in my notice and cried in the parking garage where no one could see. But you can take a woman's title. You can't take the skill out of her hands. For 12 years I quietly kept the books for 3 small businesses in town off the record because officially I didn't have a job. Every dollar we earned went into an account Marcus controlled. In 2015, I opened one small business checking account in my own name for those side clients, too small to matter, he said. Every night, in a green cloth notebook I'd kept since my first job, I wrote it all down. Every deposit, every dollar that left our house wearing his signature. Remember that notebook. My mom fought pancreatic cancer for 11 months. I drove her to chemo and kept her calendar straight. My dad, Walter, 73 and married to her 49 years, sat with her, stayed cheerful until he reached the truck. He handed me the cash envelope for her medications, said I was the one who could make a dollar behave. That's how one entry from that August ended up in my notebook, ink pressed harder than the rest. $3,800 taken by Marcus, deposit on a membership at Pinecrest Country Club. He'd pay it back by Christmas, he said. His career needed it more than my dying mom needed a stocked medicine cabinet. I logged my objection and lost quietly the way I always lost. What I remember most from those 11 months is my mom on the back porch near the end, thin as a sparrow, watching me carry her soup tray. "You've spent your whole life setting everybody else's table, baby girl," she said. "One of these days, sit down first." I told her I would. "I meant it the way you mean things you've never once actually done." She passed on a Tuesday in June. Nobody in that family noticed her funeral was about to collide with a party nobody would ever think to cancel. Nobody but me. Church was full by 10. My mom had run the hospital laundry for 28 years and led the quilting guild for 20, and both crowds turned out. My dad stood at the door shaking hands like an oak tree gone hollow but somehow still standing. Mia, my daughter, sat glued to my side and didn't let go of my hand once, scanning the doors for her father with an expression I recognized. She was doing the math on him too. In the third pew sat Diane Marsh, whose husband owned Marsh Auto Group, where Marcus had spent 13 years climbing toward general sales manager. Remember her name. Near the back stood a silver-haired man I hadn't seen in over a decade, Nathan Cole, an old co-worker from the bank. He caught my eye, gave one respectful nod, and went back to carrying in chairs. That's all it was. For now. My phone buzzed during the second hymn. Running behind, traffic's bad. Buzzed again during the eulogy. Wrap it up, party starts at 4. I stood up anyway to talk about my mom's hands, and my voice held until the last line, and half that church broke down right along with me. Then we drove to the cemetery, 40 of us, under a sky so blue it felt hired for the occasion. In my purse, my phone sat like a small black landmine. Graveside was the real crowd, 40 people who'd known my mom by her first name. My dad and I stood at the head of the grave with Mia between us, and I did the last thing on her list. I set her old porch speaker on the folding table, paired it to my phone, and hit play. Her hymn rose up tinny and warm and completely her. Pastor spoke the words about ashes and dust, and 2 men in work gloves began lowering her down. I was reaching for my rose when the music cut out. For one full second there was nothing but birdsong and creaking straps. Then the speaker, still paired to my phone, made the bright little chirp it makes when a call comes through. My screen lit up. Marcus. Every instinct screamed silence it. My thumb, clumsy with grief, hit the wrong spot. I answered him on my dead mother's porch speaker, at the edge of her open grave, loud enough to reach the back row. "Where are you?" His voice rolled out across the cemetery like a truck engine through a chapel. "I told you the party starts at 4. The Marshes are coming. I need my wife here, not standing around a graveyard all day." 40 faces turned toward that little speaker sitting among my mother's flowers, and he kept going, every word landing clean and public, like coins slapped down on a counter. "For once in your life, put me first. Get over here. Now." The straps had gone still. The men in work gloves stood frozen with my mother halfway into the earth. I heard a shovel shift in the dirt pile. I heard Diane Marsh's breath catch, watched her turn her face away, and understood with strange floating clarity that she'd remember that sound for the rest of her life. So would everyone standing on that grass. My mom used to say you learn everything about a man by what he does when he's sure nobody important is listening. Marcus was on speakerphone over her open grave, in front of everybody who'd ever loved me. I looked at the phone in my hand. I didn't scream. I didn't explain. "I heard you, Marcus," I said, and ended the call, and the hymn came back on soft and oblivious in the middle of the verse. Nobody moved. And then I saw my father's hands, and that's the moment this story actually begins. My dad spent 41 years as a welder. A man who measures 3 times and speaks once. I've seen him truly angry maybe 4 times in my life, and every time it looks exactly like this, total stillness except the hands, shaking like he'd grabbed a live wire. He stared into the grave holding the woman he'd loved since 1977, quiet so long the pastor started to say something to fill it. Then my dad lifted his head, looked at me, and his voice came out level, quiet, almost gentle. "Let's give that man exactly what he's asking for," Mia whispered, Grandpa, furious tears still on her face. I said, "Dad." He took the phone out of my hand carefully like a broken part off a machine and handed it to Mia. He wants his wife at that party. Then that's what he's gonna get. To the letter. He straightened his jacket, laid the rose I'd dropped on the casket himself, and said the strangest thing anyone's ever told me at a funeral. Trust your dad, Renee. And wear the apron. Something shifted in my chest, a gear rusted stuck for 15 years, finally moving one notch. 40 people watched us walk to the car. None of them knew what my dad was planning. Honestly, neither did I. But I got in and gave him the only answer I had left. Okay. We finished burying my mom first. The last hymn, the handshakes, the casseroles loaded into a dozen trunks. Marcus's 1-hour deadline came and went while I hugged 40 people goodbye, and I did not rush. It was past 4 when we finally drove out to Vivian's, my dad's jaw set like Sunday morning. Mia leaned forward. Grandpa, if you're about to fight him, nobody's fighting anybody, my dad said. Your grandmother didn't raise brawlers. Renee, 15 years, that man's treated you like hired help. Today he ordered the help to report for their shift. So we're not gonna fight him. We're gonna give notice. I understood the whole plan at once, and my heart pounded for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. He was handing me the door. How I walked through it was mine to decide. No screaming. And no scene he could replay as proof I'd lost my mind. Marcus wanted a wife who serves? Fine. He'd get one flawless final shift, and then he'd learn what every boss eventually learns. It's never the loud ones you have to worry about losing. It's the quiet ones who checked out weeks ago. One condition, I told my dad. Nobody says a word in there unless I say it first. He nodded like we'd shaken hands on a contract. We pulled up behind 15 parked cars. Laughter drifted over the fence with the smell of barbecue smoke. My hands were steady, I want that on the record, as the three of us walked through that gate in black like a Bill arriving at a birthday party. Conversation dipped. Marcus saw me from the drink table, flashed pure panic, then plastered on a salesman's grin. There she is. She made it, everybody. A few people clapped, unsure whether they were watching a celebration or a hearing. Vivian appeared on the porch steps, took in my funeral dress, my father, my daughter, and didn't blink. Well, you're late, dear. Those trays aren't going to carry themselves. The whole marriage, delivered in one sentence, served at room temperature. I walked past her into that kitchen I knew better than my own. I took my apron off the third peg and tied it over my funeral dress. Last time I told that peg silently. Then I got to work. Deviled eggs, brisket sliced and fanned, sweet tea refilled with lemon. I moved through that party in dead silence, precise as payroll, and never once smiled. My dad and Mia sat dead center of the yard, guests of honor at their own quiet protest. Took the crowd about 20 minutes to feel it. Laughter kept starting and dying. Marcus started sweating. By the time I carried out the peach cobbler, 30 people had gone quiet, tracking the woman in funeral black gliding through them with dessert plates, silent as a hearse. I set the coffee beside Vivian's cup, cream on the left, exactly how she'd trained me. Then, in front of every Callahan at that table, I reached back and untied the apron. Folded it once, twice, into a neat square, and laid it in front of my mother-in-law like a delivery she'd signed for. Renee, she said, a warning tone. I didn't answer. I was already working the ring off my finger. 15 years had cut a groove into my skin like a machine mark, and set it in the center of the empty silver tray, where it rang once, small and bright. I slid the tray down the table. The whole yard heard it scrape. Marcus stared at the ring, then at me. You don't get to quit on this family, he said, the truest sentence he ever spoke to me. I'm not quitting, Marcus. I'm giving notice. Effective immediately. Then I walked. My dad pushed his chair in neatly, welder to the last. Mia grabbed my purse. The gate clicked shut behind us, soft as a period at the end of a sentence. By the time we reached the truck, my phone was already buzzing. It didn't stop for 3 days. If you think that was the hard part, stick around, because leaving a man who holds every key to your life is only the opening scene, and what he tried next, even his own mother couldn't defend. Drop a like if this story's got its hooks in you. Tell me what you'd have done standing at that graveside, and stay with me on Silent Revenge, because it gets worse before it gets so much better. I moved into my childhood bedroom that night with one suitcase and my mother's porch speaker. Took Marcus 2 days to remind me who'd been holding the purse strings all along. Monday, my debit card got declined at the pharmacy. Tuesday, the banking app locked me out. Wednesday, he texted that my car, the one I'd driven to 11 months of chemo appointments titled in his name, needed to come back for maintenance. He'd already put himself first everywhere else. Now it was just paperwork. I have to be honest, I wobbled. It's one thing to lay a ring on a tray with your chin up. It's another to be 35, locked out of your own life, by a man who's very good at looking reasonable in front of tellers and pastors and eventually judges. Then I remembered the account he'd never bothered to sneer at. My little business checking, opened in my own name back in 2015. Balance $4,150. Not much against a man who had the house, both cars, and 13 years of seniority. But it was mine, out of his reach. If you've ever stood at a register holding a card you already knew would decline because somebody else decided what you deserved that week, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Mia called me that Thursday. I'm with you all the way, Mom. 20 minutes later, her father called her. Warm at first, then right before goodbye, he set the hook. If your mother keeps up this stunt, sweetheart, I might have to reconsider a few things. That college fund's still in my name. Her voice was shaking. That fund held every dollar we'd saved since the day she was born. He hadn't threatened me. He'd priced me. He'd found the one thing I'd crawl back for and set it on the table with the safety off. So the next morning I hired my own lawyer, Grace Ellison, family law, reading glasses on a chain, a handshake like a door slamming shut on somebody who deserved it. Her retainer ran $4,200, paid from the business account, and I watched 12 years of quiet invoices turn into a war chest overnight. Grace listened without a flicker of surprise. Then she asked the only question that mattered. What do you have on paper? For the first time since my mom died, I smiled. Tuesday, 10 a.m., I drove to the house on Maple Street. Still legally mine, Grace reminded me. Marcus would be at the dealership until 6. Bottom drawer by the stove, under the takeout menus, exactly where it had lived for 12 years, because Marcus never opened a drawer he couldn't spend from, my green notebook. 15 years, month by month, every deposit, and that August entry, $3,800 pulled from my mother's medication envelope, initials MC, destination Pinecrest Country Club. I was almost to the door with the notebook and a grocery sack when I heard tires in the driveway, not Marcus's truck. Lighter. Vivian's sedan, boxing me in like a chess move. She'd had a key to that house for years, since before I'd ever set foot in it. One exit, 30 seconds. So I did what I do best under pressure. I put the kettle on. She stopped in the doorway and took inventory. Me, the kettle, the sack with a green spine peeking out. Are you robbing this house, dear? Collecting my paperwork, I said. He won't forgive you, she said. Callahan men don't forgive public embarrassment. I know, I said. I'm not asking him to. Something shifted behind her eyes. Every marriage runs on somebody's back, dear, she said, quiet, almost to the window. Mine ran on mine. Yours ran on yours. The day I buried my father, I had a roast on the table by 6 that night. Nobody asked me either. For one strange second I saw her clearly, young, apron already on, grief folded up and put away because nobody had ever offered her the alternative. Then the moment closed like a screen door. Take your book and go, she said. I took it. I later learned she never told Marcus I'd been there. Small towns spread news by casserole dish, not phone. By the second week, everybody in Cedar Hollow had heard about that graveside call in detail. Checkout line went quiet and kind whenever I walked up. I gave no interviews. There was only one version of that story, and it was recorded in his own voice at full volume over my mother's grave. He'd published his own confession to the exact 40 people a man in a reputation-dependent business can least afford to lose. Diane Marsh sent my dad a sympathy card that week. Under the printed condolences, Dot raised a good woman. I keep that card in the notebook now on the August page like a pressed flower. Marcus called Friday wanting to talk like adults, then showed up Saturday with grocery store flowers, performing real concern on my dad's porch. Come home and we'll never speak of it again. I told him evenly that I was already home. His voice dropped. You'll be broke in a month. You're nothing without me, and this whole town already knows it. My dad stepped out with his coffee and looked at Marcus the way he used to look at a weld that failed inspection twice. Funny thing. The cemetery, I told her to give you exactly what you wanted. She did. You wanted to come first, son. Congratulations. Now you get to find out what first place looks like sitting alone. Marcus left rubber on the street. That evening, a letter arrived from Bricker and Voss, the loudest divorce firm in the county. Good, Grace said. Now pray he stays angry. Angry men sign things fast. While the lawyers circled, I applied for a real job under my maiden name, Bennett and Cole Accounting, the firm I'd interned at 14 years earlier. I finished the skills test in 35 minutes flat. A partner asked carefully where I'd been working the last 12 years. Private household, I said. 15 years, 0 sick days. In the lobby, a familiar face looked up from the copier. Nathan Cole. Renee, you trained half this floor on reconciliations, he said, and went back to his copies. Call came the next morning. Junior staff accountant, $23 an hour. My dad stuck the offer letter to the fridge like a spelling test. That's Sullivan work right there. Then he fried eggs badly, and I loved him more than I have words for. Starting over at 35 looks like this: alarm at 5:45, coffee in a kitchen that still has my mom's handwriting on the flour jar, 2 months of paychecks before I bought my own car, a gray Honda Civic, $3,200, titled in one name only. At the office, I was the oldest junior accountant in the building, and I loved every hour of it. But what I hold on to tightest is my dad, 73, deciding that if his daughter was going back to work, somebody was going to feed her properly. A man who'd welded for 4 decades and couldn't crack an egg. He learned. One August morning, he set a plate down, eggs, toast cut diagonal, just like my mom used to. Sit down, Renee. 10 minutes. Eat while it's hot. Cried into those eggs. He pretended not to notice, which where we're from is the same as a hug. Word drifted out that Roger Marsh was retiring. Marcus found out where I worked, of course. One Thursday, he leaned against his truck by my Civic, sunglasses up. So this is the big new life, he said, looking at my sensible shoes. Think a spreadsheet job makes you somebody? I discovered, standing right there, that he'd lost the one thing he could always count on, the flinch. Makes me the payroll, Marcus. That's more than you ever let me be. His jaw worked. His voice climbed into the register that whole cemetery would have recognized, right as coworkers came out and slowed on the sidewalk to watch. He saw them, saw himself. A man shouting at his wife in a parking lot, 6 weeks before the whole county would learn who Marsh Auto Group's next steward was. He got in his truck and left. Friday, the mediation notice arrived. Bring the book, Grace said. Marcus arrived with Bricker, who talked like a leaf blower. Their opening offer: Marcus keeps the house, 0 spousal support, or 3 years litigating Mrs. Callahan's abandonment of the marital home. The phrase they hung on a woman who'd left a backyard where she'd been serving cobbler in her mother's funeral clothes. Grace didn't argue. She opened the green notebook to the tabbed pages and slid copies across the table, calm as dealing solitaire. 12 years of household income deposited into an account only he could touch. Then the August page beside the bank statement she'd subpoenaed, $3,800 from a dying woman's medication envelope, destination Pinecrest Country Club. Nobody raised their voice. Arithmetic never has to. Marcus's face went the color of the folder. Bricker asked for a recess. For one strange minute, it was just the two of us. If you're not there, who runs everything? What am I even supposed to be? For one breath, I saw the boy this whole family had built him into, and I almost felt sorry for him. Then he straightened his cuffs. Forget it. See you in court. He'll bleed you slow now, Grace told me, unless he suddenly needs something fast. Pray he needs something. He needed something. Roger Marsh's retirement dinner landed on the third Saturday of October at the Magnolia Hotel. The whole county invited, the new manager introduced from the podium. A dealership like that doesn't sell cars. It sells trust, and Marcus's character had recently premiered unrehearsed to 40 witnesses at a funeral. So the offer came, first through lawyer language, then near midnight through my phone in the voice from the county fair back when we were only dating. One night, Renee. Come as my wife, smile, stand next to me for 3 hours, and Monday I sign everything. House sold clean, Mia's fund locked, all wrapped by Christmas. One night and you're free. I sat listening to my husband negotiate for my presence like a fleet discount, and a strange calm settled over me because at last I could see the whole marriage's real shape. It was never a marriage. It was an appearance contract, and my wages had always been the apron. I'll think about it, I said, and stared at the ceiling till sunrise. 'Cause it was a good deal. That's exactly what made it dangerous. Grace told me straight, fight this wall to wall and you're looking at $30,000 in fees, minimum a year of your life, no guarantee. 3 hours buys it all back clean. My dad drying dishes. Your mom wouldn't want you bleeding money over pride, would she? Question mark told me he didn't believe his own sentence. Mia, voice small. Mom, it's one night, I can't be the reason you lose the house. Every one of them was right on paper. That's what nobody warns you about. The wrong choice always shows up with excellent references. Late that night, I opened my closet and found a navy dress hanging behind my funeral black, tags already cut off. I'd bought it 2 weeks earlier, the morning after his midnight call. Some part of me had already said yes before I'd consciously decided anything. That dress, more than Marcus, more than Vivian, was the real enemy I'd been fighting my whole life. The night before the dinner, I sat at my dad's table with 3 things lined up like evidence for a jury of 1. The green notebook, my mother's apron off its peg since June, and Diane Marsh's cream-colored card. I opened the notebook to page 1, my handwriting at 20 careful round loops, so eager to get our new life right. One line stopped me, gift Vivian's serving tray. Even then, I was already accounting for that family's silver. My mom's voice came to me, warm as a June porch. You've spent your whole life setting everybody else's table, baby girl. One of these days, sit down first. And I finally did the one piece of math nobody had asked me for. The house was worth a number. The legal fight was worth a number. But one night had been the entrance fee for my entire adult life. String enough one nights together and you get 15 years and a woman at a graveside, holding a phone, being ordered to report for her shift. That dress wasn't a dress. It was the apron with a zipper. The dinner started at 7. 6:15 I put on the navy dress and my grandmother's earrings and drove toward the Magnolia, hands at 10 and 2. The hotel glowed like a struck match, gold light, valets jogging, the Marsh Auto Group logo 2 stories tall. Through the lobby glass I saw him. Marcus, in the tuxedo I'd picked up from the cleaners 100 times, standing alone by the fountain, checking his watch, scanning for headlights. Waiting for the staff to report. 15 years of muscle memory reached for that turn signal like a hand reaching for a hot pan. For 2 full seconds, the whole settlement sat in the passenger seat, asking to be chosen one more time. Then I drove past. Simple as that and just as hard. The road went dark and quiet, my heart slamming, and I actually laughed out loud in that $3,200 Honda in my good earrings, laughed like a woman let out of a building she didn't know she'd been locked inside. The next red light, I typed the message I'd apparently been drafting since the day I said I do. No. I'm done being your proof that you're a good man. R. I hit send, set the phone face down, and drove straight to the cemetery while it buzzed in my lap and didn't stop. I parked near my mom's row and called Grace. "I'm not at the dinner," I said. "I know," she said. "Talk to me." "Draft it tonight," I told her. "Keeps the house, all the equity. In exchange, Mia's fund gets locked, ironclad, for her and only her. My retirement stays mine. I get my maiden name back. His signature inside 2 weeks. No trial." "Renee, that's $72,000 of equity," she said. "I need you to hear that out loud." I looked at the pale new headstone. Dorothy Sullivan, 1955 to 2026. "It's not $72,000, I said. "It's a receipt. 15 years paid in full. Send it." Consent form landed in my email while I sat in the dark. I signed it with my finger by the dome light 12 feet from my mother, the smallest, most expensive signature of my life. Then I stood at her grave in my navy dress in the October cold and told her out loud, because some things only work spoken. "I finally gave notice, Mama." At 9:40 back in the car, Mia texted in all caps, "Mom, are you seeing this?" I wasn't at the dinner, so everything I know arrived the way all Cedar Hollow news arrives, and by Monday the whole town had stitched it together. Marcus alone at his table, the empty chair wearing its little gold bow. 3 drinks in when Roger Marsh introduced the county's new general sales manager, a man named Ray Delgado, 15 years in the business. The room stood for Ray. One man didn't. The coat check, while the band played its last set, my husband walked up to his retiring boss and demanded to know why. Loudly. The music had gone quiet between songs. Every person heard it. Into that silence stepped Diane Marsh in her good pearls. "We heard exactly what you gave, Marcus." The whole cemetery heard it too. Security walked him out through the same glass I'd watched him rehearse his smile through 3 hours earlier. That was the end of 13 years at Marsh Auto Group. The settlement came back signed 9 days later. No counteroffers. A man who's just lost his job needs cash more than leverage. Mia's fund locked, untouchable. My retirement mine. My name mine again. The house his, a fact I've never once regretted. Vivian closed the door on him not long after. Her son had made the family a spectacle in front of the whole county, and she can forgive cruelty faster than she can forgive being embarrassed in public. My dad read the news of Marcus's firing in the county paper, folded it exactly in half. He wanted to matter more than everybody else. Now he does. He's all he's got left. The divorce went through the week before Thanksgiving, 20 minutes in a courtroom the size of a Sunday school classroom. Marcus showed up small on the courthouse steps in the season's first thin snow. "You've ruined me," he said. Not shouting. Almost asking. "No, Marcus," I said. "I just stopped catering you." Then I walked down to where Mia waited with the Civics heater running. I signed that last page as Renee Sullivan, careful round loops, the handwriting of a 20-year-old girl who'd been waiting inside that notebook the whole time to get let back out. I grieved on the drive home, and I want you to know both things can be true at once. You can grieve a marriage and never once want it back. 15 years is 15 years. Then my dad met us at the door, porch light on, kitchen smelling like slightly burned eggs, and I was done being sad for the day. 1 year, almost to the day. Here's where you'd find me most Sundays now. A little rented house on Birch Street with a kitchen window that catches the afternoon light. Promotion at Bennett & Cole, my own growing stack of clients. And a table. My table. Sunday dinner runs on one rule, posted nowhere, enforced always: everybody carries their own plate. My dad brings bread he baked himself, took him 4 tries to get one edible. Mia brings a salad and her grandmother's exact laugh. Nobody wears an apron unless they actually feel like baking. My mom still hangs by the window, and some Saturdays I tie it on myself and make her apple pie because an apron you choose is just soft armor for people who love butter. Last month my dad showed up with my mom's old kitchen chair in his truck bed, set it at the head of my table. "Your mother saved you a seat." I about lost it in the driveway. Cross town, Vivian's Sundays go on the same as ever, a nephew's new wife learning which peg is hers. The chain didn't break everywhere. It just stopped running through me. And it's never going to run through Mia, who grins and hands down the family ruling whenever anyone demands too much. We don't work here anymore. As for Nathan, since some of you keep asking, it was months of coffee by the copier, terrible jokes about depreciation schedules, and eventually breakfast on an actual Saturday, both of us showing up embarrassingly early. He's a widower. He knows what it costs to sit down across from somebody new. He asked me where I wanted to eat. When I started to say wherever's easiest, the way I'd answered for 15 years, he just smiled and let the silence sit there, patient as a porch swing. He waited for the actual answer. I was already a whole woman before that man bought me a single cup of coffee. That's the only kind of love I let near my table now. Kind that waits. I still drive to the cemetery most Sundays before dinner, roses from my own yard, and give my mom the week's news same as I used to on her porch. This June, 1 year out, I finally gave her the only report she'd ever actually asked me for. I had somebody first, Mama. Me. The oak moved overhead. Town hummed along behind me, casseroles in transit, tables filling anyway. I sat down right there in the grass. Mama, you'd love the chair. I drove home with the windows down, back to a house where nobody was waiting to be served, and everybody was just waiting for me. If there's one thing I'd carve over every kitchen doorway in this country, it's this. If love only counts when you're the one carrying the tray, it was never love. It was labor. And you were always allowed to give your notice. That's my story on Silent Revenge tonight. One phone call on a speaker. One quiet sentence from my dad. An apron I only tie on when I actually choose to. If somebody you love has spent years serving a table she was never invited to sit at, send her this video. Drop a comment and tell me exactly what you would have done standing at that graveside. I read every one. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet, because there's a lot more of these coming, and I'll see you in the next one.